Hello everyone. We're going to be getting the webinar started in just a couple minutes. For the best viewing experience, make sure to maximize your browser, and you can use the Control+ and Control- keys to zoom in and out to get the chat to show up on the bottom if it's not currently there. Make sure to jump into the chat and ask us questions. There's a few of us in there that will be answering them throughout the presentation. And stay to the end where we'll be jumping on camera and taking some questions live with Sam and Martin as well as myself. So we'll start the webinar up in just a couple minutes. See y'all soon. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our next webinar. Today, I have the pleasure of taking some questions at the end of the presentation with Sam and Martin. Sam made a beautiful presentation showing how to take Twinmotion projects into Unreal and do some pretty fun things with them. So I hope you all enjoy it, and we'll roll the presentation now. Cheers, everybody.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Today we'll be covering how designers can further Twinmotion projects in Unreal. If you are looking for more information about setting up lighting and ray tracing, I encourage you to watch the Importing Twinmotion Projects in Unreal Engine webinar. And for compatibility, the Twinmotion Importer for Unreal Engine is a great resource. Now there are many reasons in which you might want to keep projects in Twinmotion, as it's a software that is going to allow you to create scenes very quickly. However, there are a lot of opportunities for your project in Unreal Engine. We will be exploring some of these possibilities today. We will first go into depth on a few features, including the Cesium plugin and editor utilities, and then highlight a few additional workflows that could assist your process, such as camera control, animation, and some additional tips and tricks. We will start off in Twinmotion, where you see I have a model set up. It's a large mixed-use building that has been set up with a range of entourage. It's important to know that I originally imported this with Keep Hierarchy, meaning it's going to retain the file structure from Revit. Now there is no need to export the model. You simply save the file and switch over to Unreal. To do that, I'm going to open up the Epic Games Launcher, and I'm going to go to the Library tab. And at this moment, I will use Unreal 4.26 as 4.27 does not support the Twinmotion to Unreal plugin, but will very soon. So I'll go ahead and select Launch here. When it's launched, I'll go to the Architecture category, hit Next. I'll continue on with Blank, hit Next once again. And then I'm going to start with the starter content, as it could be helpful in the future. And I'm going to enable ray tracing. I'll then go down and name my project and select Create Project. Now the architectural template is not necessary for the plugin, but it is simply a nice starting point. Once it's open, we will need to enable the Twinmotion plugins. To do this, you can go to the upper left-hand side, select Edit, go to Plugins, and then I'm going to type in Twinmotion. We will be looking for the Twinmotion Importer plugin, as well as the Twinmotion Content plugin. If you do not see these in your options, you will need to download the plugins from the Marketplace. So I'll switch back to the Launcher, and I'm going to go to the Marketplace tab. In the Search Products tab, I'm going to type in Twinmotion. And you'll see that several assets pop up. So if you are already working in Unreal, you could go in and download specific asset sets that are here in the Marketplace. For the plugin we'll be discussing today, we'll need to have the Twinmotion content for Unreal Engine, as well as the Datasmith Twinmotion importer. If you click on that, you'll notice that there are instructions and more details here. Now I'm going to go back and let's take a look at some other aspects of the marketplace that could be helpful for us. I'm going to go over to the Industries tab and select Architecture. You'll see there's quite a large collection of assets and tools you can purchase. Now I'm going to go up to the Search Products tab again, and this time type Cesium. Cesium is a free open platform tool that we will incorporate to utilize 3D geospatial data. That includes streaming terrain, photogrammetry, and imagery in Unreal. Twinmotion is great for bringing in white masking context very easily, but with this plugin, you'll be able to bring in buildings and ground planes with imagery that better reflects your context, as well as has real-world location. Now you'll see that I already have it downloaded, so let's go back into Unreal and get these plugins into our project. Here in Unreal, I'll enable both of these Twinmotion plugins first. You'll notice a window pops up. It's just letting you know that it is a beta version. I'll go ahead and select yes. I'll do that for each of those. And then I am going to go up to the search bar and type in Cesium. And I'll enable this plugin as well. Now you will need to restart the project so that it can build the plugin successfully. Once the project opens back up, I'm going to bring in the model. Go ahead and close out of the plugins window. And I'm going to go up and select Datasmith at the top bar. I'm going to go ahead and locate my Twinmotion file and hit open. This is asking me where I'd like to save the model. Content will do just fine. I'll hit OK. And these are the import options it's giving me. I'm going to keep these as is, and I'll select import. The Datasmith technology that Epic Games has been developing for other softwares such as 3ds Max, Rhino, and Revit now includes Twinmotion, meaning that you can bring in multiple Twinmotion files, utilize visual data prep, and re-import models as needed. This also means that you can include your Twinmotion files with Revit files in Unreal as well. Now, a window might pop up with some error messages here. It's letting you know that these elements that I had in my Twinmotion file are not yet supported in Unreal. Now you'll see the model came in nicely with the materials and entourage. We enabled ray tracing before we started the project, but we need to apply it to the post-processing volume. To do that, I'm going to go over to the World Outliner tab, type in post-process, select that, and then if you scroll down, you'll see under rendering features that we have some ray tracing options. I'm not going to go into all of the details here, but I'm going to first open up the ray tracing reflections and turn each of these on. To double check that we have ray tracing and not the screen space, we can go over to reflections and select ray tracing. And we'll also need to do the same thing for translucency. So underneath type, I'm going to change this to ray tracing. And you'll see that you have options here to control the settings. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the refraction for this project. Now let's set up that Cesium plugin. You will need a Cesium Ion account, which you can get from the website cesium.com. This will give you access to Cesium geospatial content. If you have your own datasets, you'll be able to upload them. However, you will already have access to some models in the Asset Depot. And then, as I mentioned, you can add data here under My Assets. I'm going to go back to my Unreal model. And before I actually bring in some of those models, I'm going to delete all of my environmental factors. So I'm going to select everything except for my post-process volume. And I'm going to delete these because we'll be using the Cesium plugin for our environment. And I'm going to go down to the bottom of the screen where it says View Options. And I'm going to make sure that the Show Plugin Content is correct. I'll then go over to the left-hand side and select the source panel. And I'm going to type in Cesium here. And we're looking for the Cesium for Unreal content. I'm going to drag and drop a Cesium Sun Sky in, as well as a floating pond. Because of the difference in the way Unreal calculates light and real-world values, we will need to enable high dynamic range lighting. To do this, I'll go up to Edit, Project Settings, and I'm going to type in Luminance. And we'll need to make sure that this extend default luminance range is checked. If you toggle this on, you will need to restart your editor. Now let's click on the floating pond. And I'm going to go down to the search details. I'm going to type in possess. And I'm going to change this to player 0. Now I'm going to go up to the cesium button at the top. This nice little icon will appear when you install your plugin. I'll go ahead and click connect here. A browser window will pop up. Once you sign in, you'll need to allow permissions. So I'll go ahead and click that here. And you'll see that we now have some options on the left-hand side for bringing in content. We have some quick add options here, which we'll be using today. Upload will be for those who have pre-existing data they would like to import. Add link lets you add a tile set, which lets you get information from a local computer or server via URL. You can select this tab to get some wonderful tutorials. And help is going to give you access to some forums that you can go to for questions. Now let's bring in some geometry. I'm going to bring in this aerial imagery by clicking the plus sign. I'll also go ahead and add in the cesium OSM buildings. Now let's take a look at what we have here. I'm going to hide the starting ground, and you'll notice that it successfully brought in the terrain. You'll also notice that you might have a black bar here at the horizon. To fix this, you can go over to your world outliner, go to your cesium georeference, clear out the possess, and underneath cesium sun sky, you're going to want to select the sun sky that we brought in. You'll see that it then goes away. Now here in the georeference, I'm going to put in the latitude for where my project is. So I'm going to type the longitude and latitude into the details panel on the right-hand side. And now you can also see the OSM buildings that came in. So these are going to be similar to your Twinmotion massing that comes in, but with cesium, we can replace these to include any data that we have of the context. However, before I bring in any other additional models, I will want to set my floating pond at 0 so that it's correctly georeferenced. I'll go over to my floating pond and clear out the transformation by going to the right-hand side next to location and hitting the yellow arrow. Now I've gone to the cesium website and added VR icons model of Washington, D.C. into my depot. I'm going to go ahead and add that into my project here to get a little more detail. To do that, I'm going to go to the cesium ion asset window, go down to the Washington, D.C. site I brought in, and I'm going to add that to the level. You'll notice that it pops in, but it is conflicting my context that I have already in the space. So to remedy that, I'm going to go ahead and hide my cesium OSM buildings, select the surface model. I'm going to raise that up in the Z location underneath the transform location details panel so that we're getting a little more view of the road. So I'm going to zoom out here and take a look at the context that we have. If the model is moving a little slow, you can go up to the right-hand side, go to camera speed, and that's going to allow you to zoom out a little bit easier if you like. You can also hold down your scroll button to bring yourself up to take a look. Now you can see how this could be very helpful for aerial images. However, this isn't all about the visuals. You could also add in your own models and data. You can imagine all of the GIS data that you can start to add in here. You could utilize Cesium's API in Ion Depot. You'll be able to leverage data from many sources, including GeoJSONs, Amazon Cloud Services, OpenStreetMaps, Reality Capture, and more. For instance, if you were in the construction administration phase of a project and wanted to use Reality Capture to take photos of a detail and generate a 3D model, Reality Capture allows you to export Cesium tiles. So then when you are in Cesium, you could go to My Assets, Add Data, and with Add Files, you'll be able to upload that Cesium tile export from Reality Capture. Now, one additional tip for using Cesium in Unreal is that you can apply georeferencing to any actor inside your model. So you'll see here that I have a portion of my model selected. Underneath Add Components in the Details window, if I scroll down, you'll see that we have access to some Cesium components, including the Cesium georeference. Now, this could be incredibly helpful during the duration of a project, so that element stays current with the location of your project. So now that you've got the Cesium plugin installed, you will have access to coordinates within the project. This could be a great starting point for exploring digital twins, You can start to add in any data you have, whether it's traffic data, proximity to public transportation, as well as connect to ArcGIS. Now, we're just touching the surface of Cesium. However, it's a very powerful tool that can help ingrain your project in the world with coordinates, information, and data. Now, this is just one plugin out there. I also encourage you to explore other plugins that could improve your workflow and customization in Unreal. Now that we've explored Cesium, let's move to 4.27 to take a look at some other beneficial workflows. I'll close out of this project and open up the same file in 4.27 that I have further developed. Now, say that this project is in an earlier portion of design and the project is going to be built and in the office for several years. Unreal enables designers to work collaboratively and with longevity. Today, we'll be taking a look at the longevity aspect using editor utilities. Unreal Engine has a motion graphics toolkit for building games, so you can imagine an interactive game that has text that pops up when you interact with a piece of geometry. Now we can apply that same technology for architecture uses, meaning at runtime, when a client is experiencing the project, we could set up text, buttons, sliders, etc. to pop up in control settings. However, we can also use that technology for our own workflow purposes while working in the editor. With editor utilities, you will have the ability to create UI elements in the Unreal Engine editor with functions that can speed up workflows and evolve over time. Let's take a look at an example of this. I've created an editor utilities folder here. Right-click the editor utility we just set up, and I'm going to run the editor utility widget. You'll see that I've docked it here in this window on the right-hand side. Now here I've created buttons in my editor window that perform actions that I know I frequently use. It can also be used to perform specific actions, such as queuing a linear sequence that I've created, or even organizing objects in my world outliner. So if you're working with many people and everyone's adding in new elements into a project, it could be helpful to organize those reflection probes and lights with a touch of a button. Now let's say that it'd be helpful to control the rendering settings for ray tracing. So perhaps for performance reasons, I want this to be set at low, so that I can move around the model quite quickly. But before I take a screenshot, I may want to increase that to high. So the ray tracing setting that I am controlling here is the max roughness for the materials in the model. Now there are many different settings that you can control. However, this one is something that I find to be very helpful. Let's take a look at how I would do this manually, and you'll see how these buttons could come in handy. So I'm going to go up to the world outliner, type in post-process. Underneath the environment, I'll select that post-process volume. I'm going to go over to my details panel, and I'm going to scroll down. You'll see I have some ray tracing settings here. These are ones that you can control to improve your ray tracing settings. I'll close out of some of these here. And I'm going to be focusing on this max roughness. Now, this is one option for controlling that max roughness. Now, we can also type it in using a console variable. A console variable allows you to have control over specific settings in the editor by typing in the console of the program. To do this, you can go up to the Window tab on the left-hand side, go down to Developer Tools, and pull up your output log. I can go down and type in the console command here. So to do that, I'm going to type in r.raytracing, and you'll see that this can give you some ideas for actions that you can perform. I'll keep on going and type in reflections.max roughness. I could go up and select that with my mouse. And then at the end, I'm going to hit the spacebar and then hit 0.5. You'll see how this changed the model here. However, you can also understand that this can start to take a very long time if you're switching in between settings. So let's go ahead and set up that editor utility so that a button will do the work for us. I'm going to go back to my content browser, and in the editor utilities folder that I created, I'm going to right-click, go up to editor utilities, and select editor utility widget. Here, I'm going to name this workflows. When I double-click it, you see that a canvas pops up. Here, I can drag and drop buttons, text, logos, and images. You'll see that on the left-hand side under Palette, you have the option for those common assets you might want to bring in. And if I keep on going, you'll see that underneath panel, I have a few options for the canvas that I'm creating. Down at the bottom, you'll see it's initially set up as a canvas panel, which is great for adopting the screen ratio. However, for our purposes, we will want to create something with a little more structure to dock into our editor. I'm going to switch that up by right-clicking, selecting Delete, and then I'm going to drag and drop the vertical box into my workflows. Now here, I'm going to go ahead and bring in some buttons and text for the high and low settings for ray tracing. I'm going to go up to the common, drag and drop button. I'll do the same thing for text. Here, I'm going to rename this button. So I'll name it High Settings button. And for text, High Settings Text. Now I can select both of those, copy, go to the vertical box and select Paste. And then I'm going to switch these to be low. I'm hitting F2 to rename them, but you can also right-click them and rename them here. Now that we have our two buttons set up, you'll see that it kept the text block text here on the button. You can change this by going over to the Details panel. You'll see that we have a lot of options for curating a custom button and window. I'm going to go up to the content, and under text, I'm going to name this High. And for the next one, I'm going to name it Low. So you'll have all the options for your appearance here. One really wonderful thing is that you can even apply tooltips for some of these buttons. So this could be helpful if you are working with other colleagues and want to have more information embedded into the button so that they can understand your intentions. Now let's take a look at how to apply some functions to these buttons. I'm going to go up to the top right-hand side and select Graph. And you'll see that on the left-hand side, under my blueprint, we have our variables showing up. So if I have the High Settings button selected here, I need to create a blueprint that is going to perform an action when the button is clicked. To do that, I'm going to go down to the Events tab, select On Clicked, and you'll see that the unclicked High Settings button node pops up. Now let's connect this to the console variable that I was showcasing. I'm going to right-click the screen. Now you'll notice that a lot of options pop up for elements that you can apply to your widgets. I am going to type in Begin Transaction here. Select that transaction. This will be the first node and will let the editor know that you are about to perform an action that you may want to undo in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and connect these by dragging and dropping. Now I can drag out from this side, let go, and you'll notice those executable actions pop again. I'm going to type in execute console command. In the command, I'm going to type in the variable I want to change. So let's type in r.raytracing.reflections.maxroughness space, and I'm going to type in 0.9. Now this is applying ray tracing to all materials that have a roughness of 0.9 and lower. I'll go ahead and end the transaction by dragging and typing in transaction. So now we have our first blueprint set up. I'll go ahead and compile them on the left-hand side, save it for good measure, and then let's go back to our editor, right-click, and I'm going to run the editor utility widget. You'll see that it's already docked here on the right-hand side. So the high seems to be working. Let's go ahead and apply the same setting to low. I'm going to go back into my workflows. I can marquee to drag and select all of the nodes I created. I'm going to copy those by using Control-C on my keyboard and then hitting Control-V to paste. Now let's bring in the variable for the low settings button. I'll go to the left-hand side, select that variable, and under Events, I'm going to select On Clicked. I'll pull that up, connect these nodes. It'll be important to change the max roughness here. I'll set that at 0.1, compile once again, and now when I select low, you'll notice that it makes the change here. So now I can toggle in between these two quite quickly. Now this may seem to only save a few seconds of time, but you can imagine how those few seconds really add up for a project that is going to be in the office for a very long time. Now let's move on to some very small but mighty tips for Unreal. I'm going to switch over to interior view by selecting perspective. Now I'll go to my lobby. So here we're going to take a look at camera control and composition. Now you'll see with my screen, I have this button up here in the top right-hand corner that is going to allow me to apply a composition overlay. Now, if you do not have this button, you can get it by going over to perspective and going over to cinematic viewport. So this can be very helpful when you're setting up your camera or if you want to change the camera that came in from the still image from Twinmotion. You'll see we have a couple of different options here, and we can apply some safe frames as well. Now we can also control the camera height. So if I go up to my world outliner and type in C Lobby, I can select my camera here, go down to my details panel, and underneath transform, I can drag the Z number to play around with my eye height. This means I can also manually type in my eye height here as well. If I want to lock my camera, I can do so by going up to the camera in the world outliner, selecting it, going to transform, and lock actor movement. So you'll know it's locked if it says locked here on the left-hand side next to the camera. I'll go ahead and remove that because we're going to take a look at setting up a walkthrough in Unreal. So to do this, I can go up to the top of the screen, under Cinematics, and add level sequence. I'm going to go over to my Cinematics folder, and I'm going to type in Sequence, Lobby. I'll hit Save, and you'll notice that a timeline pops up at the bottom. I'll go to the left-hand side, and I'm going to select Track here. In the Actor to Sequencer option, I'm going to type in my camera name. So that's C Lobby. And now I'm going to make sure the camera cut set up with C Lobby. Now let's take a look at keying the camera. I'm going to scroll down here so we can look at our camera components. Underneath Transform, I'm going to make sure that my cursor is set at 0 here. And under Transform, I'm going to select this plus button here. You'll see that a red node pops up here. That's going to set the placement for the beginning of my walkthrough. I'm now going to drag the cursor down to the end of the timeline, and using my mouse, I'm going to move forward in the project, perhaps rotate as well, and then I'm going to go back to that transform button and select the plus button here. Now you see that when I scrub through my timeline, it saved the movement that I created. Now say there might be a moment when you're turning a corner, you might clip the corner or a column. What you can do is you can select the curves here, and you'll notice that the sequencer curves are something that you have control over. So underneath Transform, you'll notice that I have access to the X, Y, and Z location here, and I can control these curves if needed. So perhaps we want these to be linear. I can select the node, come up to the top, and hit the linear button on these icons. See that you have a few different options that you control here. You can do the same thing for rotation as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and save my linear change and close out of here. Now I can key any object just as I keyed the camera. So this is how I set up that facade element I showcased earlier. So let's go ahead and apply that to an object in the scene. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back to the 0 start. I'll go over to Track. I'll add Actor to Sequencer. So here I'm going to type in Menu, select Slate Menu. I'll scroll down, and underneath Transform, I'm going to select the plus button. And now I'll move the cursor down to the end. Now I'll move the menu along with it. And I can key that transform here. So now, as I scrub through my camera, you'll see that my menu is moving as well. Now this could be helpful if you're wanting to key some animations. Perhaps these windows right here opened up more like garage doors, or if you wanted to bring in any interactive elements into your scene, you'll be able to create the animation here. So this is one situation in which Unreal goes beyond Twinmotion, as Twinmotion currently only has the rotator and movement tool. Now let's revisit this menu once more. I changed the graphic in Unreal. You'll see that I have the options to do so, as all the materials are displayed here. To change the graphic, I can double click on my material, go to color map, to see that the PNG that I used is now in this thumbnail. I can select the magnifying glass. I'm going to minimize this here. And you'll see that it brought me to the PNG that I imported. So this means you can drag and drop any texture into the content browser and then drag your new object into the chalkboard thumbnail. Since I did change the graphic of the menu, perhaps I want to take that object back into Twinmotion or another program such as Revit or 3ds Max. I can select the asset, right-click, select Browse to Asset. And now here, I can right-click this, select Asset Location, and you'll see that we have two options for move. We could export the model, which is going to allow you to export it as an FBX or OBJ. We could also migrate the model. This is going to allow you to take the asset into other Unreal Engine projects. This means we can send our model to any other collaborators or back to designers who may need to cross-reference. Lastly, I'd like to make a pixel-perfect image of the model I've created. To do so, I'm going to go up to the top left-hand side of my viewport, and I'm going to hit Lit and select Path Tracing. Now, this is going to be the most accurate render solution for you as well as the quickest production-wise. This technology will be coming into Twinmotion in the future. However, I did want to bring it to your attention for anyone who may feel overwhelmed about the wide range of settings in Unreal. Path tracing is going to give you very quick, beautiful results that have accurate reflections. So if we want to take a look at some of those settings, I can go over to the World Outliner tab, type C Lobby. So I want to select my camera that I have here. Then under rendering features, you'll see that I have a few settings here. Some that can be very helpful is going to be the samples per pixel. Here I have 512. At default, it comes at a much higher number. However, I can always go in and switch these up as needed. So if I wanted a high-res image, I could type in 496. Or if I wanted to iterate quickly, I could even type in 32. You'll see that I also have the option for denoiser. Keeping the denoiser on is going to allow you quick production. You'll notice that when I change my scene here, it's automatically enabling that progressive render. Now I'm going to go back and set this at 4096 to take a look at the high resolution. As this is rendering out, I do want to let you know that we don't have time to go into depth into all of the different use cases, but we did want to point out a few and also note that each of these can be used in any part of the design process. Whether you are working with massing and concept design, referencing the model for design communication during construction administration, or even after building has been occupied as a digital twin. For any of our viewers who started out in Unreal many years ago and haven't quite played around with Twinmotion, I'd encourage you to do so. Many of the new advancements of Unreal are making their way into Twinmotion, such as path tracing and megaspans, and will have increasingly more compatibility. So perhaps you need to create a quick animation for a competition or create and send a model to a client using the cloud. Twinmotion is going to be the most efficient and useful tool. And now I'll leave you with that and invite you to stay for our Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Sam. So welcome to the live Q&A for all of you guys. Please jump into the chat if you're not already there. We'll be taking some questions. We have a list of questions that actually came in during the presentation that we'll be going through. And I'd like to introduce you to a few of my colleagues that are here to have a chat with us. So we've got Sam Anderson, Martin, and a special guest, Antoine, jumped in also. So maybe you guys can go through and just give a brief introduction to who you are and the types of things you're doing at Epic Games.
Yeah, I can go first. I am a technical marketing manager at Epic, so I am working on a lot of content for both Twinmotion and Unreal. So that's going to be webinars, conferences, creating videos and images to help you all out. So very happy to have you all here, and I'll now pass it off to Martin.
Thank you, Sam. So hey, I'm Martin. I'm also marketing manager like Sam, but more focused on Twinmotion. So if you have any question regarding only Twinmotion, I will be the one that can help you.
Awesome.
Antoine, for you.
Hey, I'm Antoine. I'm a product specialist for AEC for Unreal Engine, but I also help Twinmotion from time to time. You might have seen me on the forums, on Discord. I'm here to help make better products.
Yes, totally. I love that. Cool. Well, that was a great presentation. Love seeing all the cool things you can do with those Twinmotion data sets once you've brought them into Unreal, and kind of give people an understanding of some of the things that Unreal brings to the table. The question was asked, you kind of showed a plugin that was first started off in 4.2.6. It wasn't available when you recorded this presentation in 4.2.7. So you said coming soon. Any update on that?
Yeah, so we are working on that, and it will be very soon. So I would stay tuned for the next couple days and keep an eye on it. So I know that we just got that question right now. So we have also a question for UE5 as well. So that's going to be later down the road. So we don't have that for you just yet. So for now, if you're working today and want to do something production-wise, 4.2.6 will be your best bet. And then in the next couple of days or weeks, you'll be able to use it in 4.2.7.
Yeah, and we get the question about Unreal 5 a bit when we're doing the presentation. So 4.2.7 came out a few weeks ago. It's technically our most current released version. Unreal 5 is obviously still in early access, so not fully featured, not recommended for doing true production work yet. So just keep that in mind, that 4.2.7 is the current released shipping version, and it's actually it's pretty fresh. It only came out a few weeks ago. So this also is a pretty common question, Sam. They're asking what hardware was used for this presentation, and maybe you could explain a bit about what gear you're running.
Yeah, so I have a 2080 Super. So this is going to be the RTX card, which is going to allow me to do some of the ray tracing and path tracing that you see on the Unreal side. So if you are working in Twinmotion now, having that RTX card isn't necessary for you. So I do just want to point that out, that you may want to check your RTX card, or I'm sorry, your GPU, to see if you do have an RTX card. That is going to be kind of the latest series that have come out in the past few years. You do not need to have an RTX card to use Unreal. However, for the features I was showing, which is the ray tracing and the path tracing, you do need to have that RTX card.
Awesome.
I don't know if Daryl, you want to expand on that a little bit to give some more information.
Yeah. So the other thing that you need the RTX card for would be for GPU light baking. So if you want to use the GPU to pre-bake the GI or the global illumination information into texture maps, that's also RTX dependent. But as you said, it's not a necessary thing. It just opens up more features and the ability to create ray traced effects, which are quite beautiful. So everyone. RTX cards they're cool. They're great. I think most people are trying to get a hold of them. They're still a bit challenging to grab, but this presentation, obviously you're running on a 2080, so last generation card, and it's still very performant. It's just they're cool cards. So a couple of other questions that come in. We're talking about ray tracing. So tips for Path Tracer, and I know that we've all played around with the Path Tracer. So what rattle off a few things that you think are important when working with the Path Tracer, Sam?
Yeah, I think it will be something that's very exciting for both Twinmotion users and Unreal users, since this technology is going to be seen in Twinmotion in the future. If you are coming into Unreal, I encourage you to even start off with Path Tracer just to kind of check it out if it's something that you've never played with before, because I do think it is going to open up your world for getting beautiful visuals quickly. It is good to note that exteriors will be a little bit more efficient to render with the Path Tracer as opposed to interiors. You can still do interiors, but you will need to light it quite well. But Antoine, I know Antoine's been doing a lot of testing for both softwares with the Path Tracer. So do you have any tips or tricks that you would like to share as well?
So there's a very handy little tip for the Path Tracer. We have actually a loading bar to show you the progress of the convergence of the Path Tracer. I think the command is r.pathtracer.progress. I'm not 100% sure. Sorry, I don't have my notes here.
It's a CVAR.
But it's a CVAR, so you use it from the output log or the console. And it's going to show you the progress on your Path Tracer convergence.
Yeah,
it's
so
pretty cool.
It's being a Path Tracer. It's going to add more samples and continue to refine until it reaches the sample limit that you've set, or the sample count. So that progress bar lets you know, because sometimes the image starts to look so good, you're like, I don't even know if it's still rendering. Is it still adding more samples and refining? Because it looks like it's completely converged to a final frame, but it still might be, the background processing. So that bar actually gives you a really nice visual cue as to what's going on with that, which is a great tip. Other things to keep in mind with the Path Tracer, it's still in development. It's going to continue to improve in both speed and visual fidelity. It does have a really nice denoiser in there, but that comes with the inherent limitations that denoisers have. So it's going to do things like soften reflections. It's going to struggle in areas around depth of field or behind translucent objects. So there's going to be a few areas that you're going to want to be mindful that, in its current state, just there's some early limitations there that will continue to improve as algorithms get better, basically. But it's super cool, and it's gotten so much better in the last few releases. Like the ability for it to support all the automotive material packs and accurately represent what those are doing has actually been really nice, and that was all new in 4.2.7. So a question about floating pawn and dynamic pawn. So this was when you were working with Cesium. So maybe we could talk about the pawns really quickly.
Yeah, that is a very good question. So with Cesium, they are continuing to update the plugin all the time. And so the dynamic pawn is going to be the latest and greatest pawn that you will want to bring in for that. So that is when you are bringing in the pawn so that you can orient the person to your project. Because it is real world accurate, it comes in with that first scene that you see with some of the mountains. So when you add in your coordinates for your project, you will want to zero out that dynamic pawn at that time.
Awesome. So Martin, here's a question. People are asking what comes across from Twinmotion into Unreal with the Twinmotion to Unreal plugin. So maybe you could talk a bit about what's currently coming across.
Yeah, right now we support most static objects. So all the objects that you dragged from the library that are not moving, so chairs, table. We support also vegetation. We support the lights. Right now, what we don't support is animated objects, like skeletal mesh, like the animals, the characters. We also don't support at the moment some tool like the Path tool and the wall weather and the wall weather system. We don't support it yet, but yeah, it's still in a working development. So yeah, we expect to have more things coming in the future.
Yes, and people are asking about the Twinmotion interactivity. Does that come across? So currently, no, that like any presenter type things that you did in Twinmotion wouldn't come across. What RTX card? Does it support multi-GPU? So multi-GPU support is limited inside of Unreal. So things like the GPU Lightbaker and Path Tracer could use multi-GPU. I believe the Path Tracer can use it too. I haven't actually tried it, but I know the GPU Lightbaker can.
Don't think it does. The Path Tracer does not support multi-GPU.
Okay, so just in display. So if you're trying to do multiple screens for a large dome or a virtual production stage, is going to be capable of using multi-GPU, and then the GPU Lightbaker can use multi-GPU. At a very low level, Unreal has multi-GPU support, but you'd have to basically code your project around that. So it'd be a very specific use case if you wanted to do that. So out of the box, it's really just in display in the Lightbaker. 360 panoramic cameras, can you do those in Twinmotion and Unreal? So maybe Martin, you could talk about the 360 panoramic camera in Twinmotion, and then Sam or Antoine could talk about how to do that in Unreal quickly.
Yep. So like any other media inside Twinmotion, when you create you can create either an image, but you can also create a panorama, and yeah, that's pretty basic. Like it create a panorama. Then when you export it, it exports a 360 image. There are no metadata inside it, so you will need to use a third-party application to load metadata inside. Or same thing if you want to like, for example, link those panorama together. Right now, we don't have any tools to do that yourself, so you will need to use a third-party website or application to do that. But we have some plans regarding that will come in the near future.
Excellent. So Sam, you want to talk about screenshots and 360 panoramics in Unreal?
Yeah. So there are a few different things that you can do in Unreal to get those. So all of the video outputs that are coming from Twinmotion, you can't upload them directly into Unreal using the plugin. However, you can replicate and produce all of those in Unreal. So there's a couple different things that you can do. There is an option for screenshots. I don't cover that in this webinar, but in the previous webinar, the Twinmotion into Unreal webinar that we did earlier this year showcases that a little bit. And then there will also be the movie render queue. So that is going to be kind of your best bet for creating those high visuals. You'll have a lot of control there and be able to set all the settings that you want there. Antoine, do you want to go into any more of the 360 aspects of Unreal?
Yeah, so 360, we actually have a two-part tutorial on YouTube. I'll post the links
Yeah,
on
I think
the chat.
David did that tutorial, I'm pretty sure.
Yep. So here are the two parts. I do not know much, actually. I'm sorry about that, Sam.
All good. Sorry to put you on the spot.
You had a link handy, so you knew what you needed to know, which was like...
I knew we had a video somewhere.
David Bayless did that video for us, and it goes through it in a really nice way. So check that out if you want to learn more about it, which is super cool. So the question directly below that, BIM information and IFC files. So IFC files do come into Unreal. They come in really nicely through Datasmith. And someone would love AR-like features in Twinmotion. So there is a new AR template in Unreal, which is amazing. We'll be covering that off in a future webinar. AR-like features in Twinmotion. So I don't know of any development on that, but we do have that new plugin inside of Unreal. So Martin, maybe you know a bit more about future support or what's on the roadmap as far as AR, if anything, for Twinmotion.
Right now, we don't have any plan for AR regarding Twinmotion at the moment. If you want to learn more about what's currently in development and what we plan later on, you can have a look at the Twinmotion public roadmap. We will post that in the chat. Here we have most of the features we are currently working on. That will be a pretty good overview of what to expect in some of the next release.
Excellent. So here's another question that actually goes into the AR question. Can Unreal use an M1 graphics chip? So I actually just created some AR apps published onto an iPad, and I used an M1 MacBook Air to get that compiled and onto it. So yes, it works really well. Actually worked much better than the older Intel chip for my use case. It was much faster to compile the materials. So yeah, I think that you should be fine for that. Visual data prep with Twinmotion. So Twinmotion does not have visual data prep. It does have the ability to kind of manage your draw calls a bit with the collapsing based on material, but it doesn't have the full visual data prep workflow that Unreal supports, which is one of the reasons why if you're doing certain types of things, you might want to jump from Twinmotion into Unreal. Is that
So there's also, you can use visual data prep with Twinmotion files. If you are bringing your TM files in UE, you can use the same workflow as importing a Datasmith file or a CAD file, but with the Twinmotion files.
Yes.
In that case, you might want to make sure that you have keep hierarchy when you bring in your original model. If you are wanting to access some of those original layers in Unreal for the visual data prep, otherwise you will have the layers already converged as materials, which could get a little bit more difficult using the visual data prep in Unreal.
That's a great tip. Yeah, absolutely. Why is ray tracing features deprecated? So yeah, it's just we're changing things in UE5. It's not that it's still going to have hardware-based ray tracing in certain aspects, but it's still in early access. So that's all work in progress there. It's features created. Are there any questions that jumped out to you guys? Because I'm kind of rolling through the list now and.
Yeah, there was a question about where you can learn some of this information. So if you're new to Twinmotion or Unreal, we have an Unreal online learning portal. So I will link to that. The ones that I'll be linking to are specifically an exterior Unreal scene as well as an interior Unreal scene. However, there's also Twinmotion content in there also. When you go there, there is a platform for architecture. So it can be industry-based if you wanted to So if you're brand new to the portal, I do want to note that you can follow an architecture track.
Cool. I just switched over to the Unreal Learning slide, and I'm not sure if actually I muted your microphone when I did that. So there might be a pause there where we lost your audio for like 5 seconds. So if that did happen to everyone, I apologize. I'm sure our chat will light up if I did that to you guys, but hopefully I didn't. All right, so let's go through this list here and see if there are any other questions. Can you handle 5 million polygons? Is an RTX card required? So no, you definitely do not need an RTX card to bring in 5 million polygons. Unreal's pretty forgiving with large polygons counts. It's more about the draw calls. So how many individual objects or how many unique materials and individual objects combined. Obviously, there is going to be a limit to how many polys you can move, but in general, 5 million polygons shouldn't be a problem for most current GPUs. You don't need an RTX card for that. Can you set up collisions on Datasmith files? Yeah, you could definitely set up collision once it's in to. So someone said, can you set up collisions on Datasmith files using Blueprint? So once Datasmith files have come in, then they're just static meshes or they're just assets inside of Unreal. So you could do any Blueprint work that you would traditionally do in a gaming workflow with those. You can also use the visual data prep that we talked about earlier to on the pre-process and the ingest of that data to start to filter things and set up collisions and do some specific types of things, which is super cool. What is Mega Jam? So, Antoine, you want to talk about Mega Jam? Or do you know what Mega Jam is? I guess that might be better.
I know what it is, but I don't have much info about it.
Yeah, Mega Jam is it's a game jam. So it's just a fun event that we do, and it's about to start rolling. So more game development, and less Twinmotion or Unreal. All right, so I think we're getting kind of close to the end of here for these questions. Martin, are there any Twinmotion topics that we didn't discuss that you feel are important to get out before we call it a day?
No, we saw a lot of UE question. Like this was mostly UE related, this one. So yeah, I didn't saw any question that attracted my eyes today.
Excellent. How about you, Antoine? Any last closing thoughts or questions that we glossed over that we should maybe dive back into? Or
so earlier I saw that someone asked for an easier way to render stills, still shots. We actually have a new tool in 427 that helps you set up cameras to render stills, and you can save presets. You can save render queue. It's using the movie render queue tool, and it's an easier way to render and set up your still camera shots. It should be in the movie render queue plugin folder. Look for a Blueprint utility that has still in the name.
Great, awesome tip. Sam, I guess we'll leave you to wrap the webinar up since you created this awesome presentation and cover up any closing thoughts that you might have or any questions that we missed.
Yeah, I do see that there is a question about whether there are plans to implement animated FBXs. I'm not sure if that's in regards to Twinmotion or Unreal, but you can do that in Unreal. You can bring in animated FBXs. As far as it going from Twinmotion into Unreal, one nice little tip is if you're bringing in some of the meshes, such as the animals from Twinmotion to Unreal, it comes with a skeletal mesh that you could then apply in the details panel in Unreal, so that animated portion from Twinmotion you can get into Unreal. So that's kind of possibly a hidden thing that's there that you might be able to bring in. As far as the animated FBX, that is, we get asked a lot, why bring it into Unreal? And so that is one reason why if you have a lot of animated FBX, so say if you're working in architecture and you need to showcase how a facade is going to be put together or how doors will open as someone's walking through the space, and you've already animated that in Max, or you'll be able to bring that into Unreal. And so this is, just one of the questions that we get can you do this in Twinmotion? And usually the answer is if it's not available in Twinmotion, it is available in Unreal. So we did want to bring some of these things to your awareness. And so hopefully this has been helpful to some degree. Once again, we do want to thank you all for joining us, and hopefully we answered some of your questions. But yeah, there will be more information coming out in the future, but we're also excited to see some of the work that you have been doing. So we have a Twinmotion community page. So if you've done any Twinmotion to Unreal work in the past, or since it's come out, we would love to see some of the stuff that you're doing. So we encourage you to post your photos or images on there, because we get inspired when we see your work as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for the amazing questions that we had. We appreciate you staying to the end with us and asking your questions. If you happen to have some questions or you think of some more questions, we will be doing a second take of this webinar at 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to come back, we'll be here at 2 p.m. going through the presentation one more time, and again, taking questions through the chat and the online chat that's running during the presentation, as well as the live Q&A at the end. Thanks to Sam, Martin, and Antoine for joining me today, and special thanks to Annie and Matt in the back that keep the webinar running and make sure everything's flowing. We'll be doing these webinars pretty much every month. We have a few in the works, so if you haven't opted into our communication, please do, so that you can continue to get updates on all the wonderful things that we're doing on the enterprise business side of Unreal and Twinmotion. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up and say cheers, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
All right, 4:32.